his expertise. He don't need no all to deceive the whole world that becomes his workshop. Come on and the game to him. Religion, psychology, nothing is sacred. No, nothing is sacred to whenever man is straight, you can just hear that song way. Oh, can't you see? It was that slick there in the corner, the one that tricked around and deep. Behind by the clock and that image on the wall. Everyone would you believe? He's the piece of a revelation being not mistaken, the real fake. That's me. Don't waste your time in cussing. I'll be the good of his own midlife is in your life. It's only understood if you were just start believing in truth and reality. The truth is a life away, but as long as you keep using him, you can you decide. Does he
Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen wa Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim wa ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. Dear brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillah, thank you for joining us this morning for All Things Human. Alhamdulillah, as we continue on in this segment with the address of Satan, hypocrites, history, and the Word of God. As always, Wednesday mornings we share something from the archives of Imam Waridin Muhammad rahimahullah alayhi, and that was a piece from Round Figures 1983, Harlem, New York, when Imam Ali Rashid rahimahullah alayhi was still the Imam, and there's quite a bit that actually went before that, but it had everything to do with the quote unquote the politics of what was going on in Harlem at that time. Alhamdulillah, very good, but I decided not to spend time with that earlier portion. So that's all I'm like Forrest Gump, and that's what I have to say about that. We want to continue because we want to continue to add to the building of our understanding of the subject, which actually was initiated by a subject of the Imam that was actually under the same title, at least archived under the same title, the Satan, Hypocrites, History, and the Word of God. And we just have to go on with the time that we have. So where do we begin today? Oh, okay. So we're going to pick up where we left off last week, and at this moment, the core of it is identifying the strategy of the real world Satans. The strategy of the real world Satans. Now, it's important to me to point out to you, as the address that we listened to from the Imam, he spoke of our primary orientation in Al-Islam. That's what we have to be, no matter what we are doing. We have to always make sure that our orientation is towards the sacred masjid, the Kaaba. And of course, we're not speaking about it concretely. We're speaking about it abstractly. We're speaking about it transcendently. We're speaking about it spiritually. We're speaking about it metaphysically. We're speaking about it as an orientation of heart, mind, soul, spirit, our existence. All right. That being said, the Imam points out where the Quran says, wheresoever you turn, there you'll find the face of Allah. So That means universally Allah's will, Allah's way, Allah's plan, Allah's purpose is always and ever present. And whatever it is that we're doing, whether we're doing, government, whether we're doing education, whether we're doing business, whether we're doing culture or worship, we make sure that the orientation of our heart, mind, soul is towards that purpose. Once you got that, then that's fine. Do your business, do your education, do your governance, do your culture, all that. But make sure that the orientation of it is towards that. And that's critical. And I'll say, I was used to saying, so I would be sure to have gotten everything in the frame. I would say, well, look at Surah Al-Baqarah 2, 145 to 155. And it's just the teaching is just terribly rich. Of course, everywhere, but for when we're talking about what we're talking about now, the focus of building up and actually deconstruction of culture, society, environment that we're in, that set of verses is very useful. But now expand it, take it from 141 to 155. Surah Al-Baqarah, chapter 2, 141 to 155. And you study that, especially for leaders. You study that, it's very, very critical. Because all that we are doing, we are indeed trying to get the entire body of us moving with that orientation. The entire body of us moving with that orientation. So much to be said on that. I was just thinking about slime mold just then. So I won't go there, but those who've heard, I will talk about slime mold. Bring that into your frame. There's a great benefit. But here's the core verse that we are leading from right now. And when that changes, of course, we'll let you know that changes. But for right now, this is the core orientation for this subject matter at this stage. And it is the real world Satan's strategy is to create a strategic problem and then give birth to the pairs of opposition relative to the problem and then manipulate both sides emotionally. That real world Satan then steps in to offer a solution that they had before they created the problem. And last week we went to the let's call it a meme for now, of Superman. He busts on the scene and says, "I'll save you." That whole idea. But see, that Superman was also and is also a sign of the real world's Satan as well. And I'm not gonna spend a lot of time there. We spoke to it last week, and everything there's khayr and shar. You can get the beneficial side. A symbol has its benefits, but then also it has its harm. It has the truth that it reveals, and it also has the lie that it reflects. Not gonna spend time there. We spent last week. We talked about. We mentioned the Twilight Zone episode. I'm talking about the old Rod Serling original black and white Twilight Zone episode, whose title was "To Serve Man." To serve man. And we spent a lot of time talking about it, how when you read it without looking beyond the three words there together, you think that to serve man is for his benefit. No, it's actually to serve man as an appetizer, let's just call it, to serve man as an entree. Aliens had come, and what they gave was a way for man to improve his food and for man, therefore, to become more healthy, which when in fact the aliens were actually farming the same way we would deal with cattle and other kinds of domestic animals as a food source. We want them to be healthy. And so we get them to be healthy and then consume them. So the Twilight Zone episode was actually saying that these aliens, they'll help to improve your health, but it was not in order to benefit you per se. It was as a preparation for you to be consumed by them. That's satanic. And that was, the Twilight Zone episodes had that function. I'm talking about the original Rod Serling Twilight Zone. They were parables. They were less parodies. You get Saturday Night Live and the like. You get those kind. You get parodies in that sense, but satire, and you have satire with Saturday Night Live and stuff like that. And the psychology of society today is such that that type of satire is usually missed by the masses in general. So really, it has a role of basically taking things perhaps that should be respected and just disrespect them, and that's all that the society gets from it right now. In my view, they get from it right now is just disrespect anything that has any kind of traditional or sacred value. Give it no respect. Okay, so that's the problem. But before we come to a time like this, in the early times, I mentioned Jonathan Swift, also A Modest Proposal. He was also a satirist. So the early writers, these people who were under the oppressions of different type, whether it be the oppression of the papacy, the oppression of the crown, the monarchy, etc. The great minds of those period of time, all the way up to and through H.G. Wells and the like in this period of time, who I'm certain W.D. Farrar drew greatly from H.G. Wells. The Isle of Dr. Moreau, The Invisible Man, all of those. I believe H.G. Wells' War of the Worlds too. So, in any case, the point is that there is a time. There are those who in the past have really illustrated through their stories and the like, and now through up to the point in time I'm speaking of Twilight Zone and the like. They are really trying to tell the truth about the culture, about the society that we live in, to sort of wake people up to it. That's less and less evident nowadays. Let's move away from that. So the idea of giants and aliens. And I really want you to get this. We're gonna at another time. We're gonna talk about, inshallah. We're gonna talk about zombies, The Walking Dead, those things, and because these are images, popular images, but they are in touch with, and they resonate with something that is going on psychically with the state of human society right now. So there are those who are they're telling the story, but much of the story that really needs to be told and understood when you move it outside of the religious realm. It's actually told in a lot of these horror stories. I'm not inviting you to go look at them, but I'm just saying it's like that crazy kind of suicide squad we mentioned. There's a truth that's being told in that, but most, the common person, some people just go and they just get, quote unquote, just they want their adrenaline. Sometimes seeing that kind of crazy stuff, and that kind of makes people feel alive to an otherwise very numb and dead life. So you have to go into the suspense and this crazy kind of stuff in order to feel that there's life. Don't want to stay there. Now, so the issue of giants and aliens, I want to bring that concept down to earth to you. Let's put it like that. I want to bring that concept down. It's very, very important. It's just like we talk about the real world Satans. So right now I'm about to mention about the real world giants and aliens, because that's also something that's being worked right now. And it has been worked for a long time. I have a lot to say about that. But the reason I say things like that is because every time it comes to mind, I say, man, you got a lot of detail for that over there. And you got a lot of detail for that. Okay. But we can't do it right now. So whenever I say I'm not going to stay there, I'm just letting you know this is why things kind of expand for me because there's always more to say. But let's get on with it. But I want to bring today. I want to bring giants and aliens down to earth because I'm seeing on not just because, but we see on television now. They're talking about recently released documents that have long been held under classification, and they've been declassified, and things about giants and aliens. So they're still doing the same thing because it's all you can do. Deceive the people. Look over there, right? And so when they got you looking over there, they're doing something over here. They got you looking over there, but they're doing something over here. And so it is with giants and aliens. So just like we speak of, there's a reality and there's a real world Satan. Similarly, there are real world giants and aliens, but giants and aliens are just labels for, when you understand that, they're just labels for social phenomena, certain social phenomena. All right, I'll say it again. Giants and aliens, when understood, they're just labels for certain social phenomena that are real. So, in brief, what is the reality of giants and aliens? I want to refer you to, I believe that the Lords of Creation. Yeah, Lords. It's an old book. You can find it. I believe you can go to Amazon and find it. Had to be more likely where I found it. Very old Lords of Creation, and it's actually talking about the Rockefellers, the DuPonts, the J.P. Morgans. Excuse me. The men that built America, that oil money, that railroad money, and then also even in real estate and stocks and the like. Those, brothers and sisters, are your aliens. Those are your giants. Okay. So I make a note to myself here. So if you find the publication, I say the reality of what are giants and aliens is described in about 38 minutes of the 9th chapter. So it's an audio book. At about 39 minutes of the 9th chapter. And so you hear actually there's another. Never read it. I know that there's a movie, old movie that came out about it. I'm talking about old in the sense of whatever, 80s. Lords of the Universe is also called Lords of the Universe. And I believe it's a Tom Wolfe book. Lords of the Universe. And this book that I'm speaking of right now, Lords of Creation. So there is a perspective where these type, once you get to a certain level of power and force and wealth, etc., in this society, you are something superhuman. Yeah, that goes back to Ubermensch, Superman, aliens, giants, powers, superhuman powers, right? So while that seems like an exaggeration, if you try to think about it in any kind of cosmic terms, I'll put it that way. But if you think about it in terms of how one set of human beings or a human being can be so transcendent, so superior, so far beyond another group of people, then by comparison, one is a giant and the other is a Lilliputian, for example, like in Gulliver's Travels. I don't remember who wrote that book, but that is also a parody, a parable, a satire of what I'm talking about. So I want you to understand, the people who understand it, like the movie The Matrix, for example, the people who understand the nature of the society that we're living in and who want to either preserve the knowledge or actually present the knowledge, and I would assume in some cases promote the knowledge, but again, promote it for who? It's different. So it's like if you're not taught how to read it or brought into the reading of it, then it's not really meant for you. But in any case, the reality of what are giants and aliens is described in about 38 minutes of the 9th chapter. These giants are giants in economic terms, and part of the language for people who reach this level, they're called plutarchs. And the kind of rule that they bring about is plutocracy, right? Let me see if I can. We think about over there in England, they have kings and princes and dukes, and we don't have that over there. Yes, you do. Yes, you do. We just don't call them that. But the same kind of deference, the same kind of power, same kind of influence, the same kind of liberties, and what have you, that are given to the royals over there, is the same thing that happens over here. And I mean, if you want to wake up, then you should understand that's part of the reality, right? So you have the plutocrats. The plutocrats are those people that have this power over industry, right? Corporate power and wealth and the like. So it's like they're like from another planet, right? Their world is totally different from our world. All right, so that's a reality. Now, while that can be said with regard to economic terms, I want you to understand that it is also true for all domains of human endeavor, right? We like the four birds, alhamdulillah, because the four birds encompass everything. And the way the Imam has interpreted them for us, you can always use it, right? So you're talking about education, you're talking about culture, you're talking about government and governance, and we have business economics, right? So it's like, just like there are giants in the economic sphere, there are giants in the cultural / spiritual sphere. Yeah, there are giants in the academic sphere, and there are giants in the political and governance sphere. They are sphere. They are just as far ahead of the average one in that field, so much so that one is like an alien and the other is like just a quote unquote human being, to use that scientific that science fiction paradigm, right? So such people, once they have a certain level of economic wealth, they are in a whole nother economic world. They're not even in the same world of so many people. But it's the same for as far as political power, same for as far as academic power, it's same for as far as religious, cultural power, same thing. So such people with this knowledge, by comparison to the masses of people relative to that class of knowledge. So it's like in every world you have, I'm going to use this term, it's just for this part, you have aliens and you have the humans, right? You have aliens and you have the humans. So intellectually, aliens and humans. Philosophically, aliens and humans. Spiritually, aliens and humans. Economically, aliens and humans. Politically, aliens and humans. So you have those. And why? It's because they have a knowledge about the domain that those who don't have that knowledge, they're not even in the same game. Therefore, they're not even in the same world. Such people with this knowledge, by comparison to the masses, relative to that class of knowledge, either one that we've just spoken of, they can be seen as aliens or even gods. This is not I am not seeing them as gods. What I'm saying, though, they are seen as gods by those who don't have the paradigm that we have, that filter out that way of thinking. So therefore, many of these people actually become an object of worship And there are also expressions, they express power in those domains that are just quote unquote awe inspiring, uh, meaning let's say evoke fear and deference in people in that world. We're talking all the four birds. Let's just abbreviate it. So they in their sphere are seen as aliens, even as God, meaning they're out of this world, right? When they say out of this world, meaning that it's the economic world, four birds. I want to move on. So the little people, so that's how they're seen by the quote unquote little people. And certainly they can be personified as such by the people of insight in that category of knowledge. Again, with all of my qualifications, la ilaha illallah, okay? The category of knowledge, for example, Gulliver's Travels speaks in some way to this disparity of size and this asymmetry of haves and have-nots. All you got to do is just you Google something like, what is the relationship between the top 1% and the bottom 80% of the world with regard to wealth. How many people hold how much of the portion of global wealth by comparison to those who are on the top and those who represent, I'll say, as much as 80%. You see, there's a very small number that has so much more than a vast number of human beings. It's that kind of disparity that we're talking about, that kind of asymmetry. And and that's how it is. That's how it is in every domain, in all worlds, right? Now, so therefore, when you understand that those exist as a reality and their power ratio, the power ratio between the haves and the have-nots is so extreme. That's why we have the world that we have, and how and why the world is the way that it is right now. Now, a couple of things. We talked about the Superman piece. Now, most of you know, and most of you, I believe, fit my demographic. I know there are a lot of you who are younger, but most of you fit the demographic. So you remember telephone booths, and that's where Superman used to go and change. And I'm telling you, just like I told you before, and especially when we dealt with Superman versus Batman, seeing the satanic representation as actually in Superman. And so, I mean, what do you think that S on his chest actually stands for? It's a lot of things, but you never thought about that, perhaps. In any case, so the point is that Superman, he used to go and he used to change. Clark Kent, right, was his name. And so he used to go into a telephone booth and he would change from his regular street clothes into his Superman uniform by going into a telephone booth, right? Here's another one, Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. A telephone booth was also one of their main modes of transportation, the telephone booth, right? If you watch The Matrix, when Trinity, she definitely got your attention with that opening, that first Trinity, the first of the trilogy of The Matrix. It's like that scene when she whooped up on those police. That was crazy. And that first chase scene, crazy. It's memorable, right? And then when she first had to get out of there, where she have to go? She had to go into a telephone booth. She went into a telephone booth. And then there was another Another one, you have the time bandits. Time bandits. Okay. The telephone booth also figured in one of their modes of transportation as well. Time bandits were like little dwarfs that used to work for God, but they stole the blueprints of time. They stole the blueprints of history. And they would, since they already knew what was going to happen in history, uh, then they would go to those places and steal stuff from those places. And brother and sister, it's like, look, you see, there are people whose creativity, it's people whose intellect is so far ahead of the common person's thinking. This is why they can put together movies and the like of this order and magnitude, of this depth, and make it look like it's what just flashed through my mind is David Blaine, right? This magician, right? David Blaine. It's like you really don't have any idea of how he does what he does, and he does it in your face. It's right there in front of you, and you do these things that are crazy. So it's like, and see, that's and he's a quote unquote a magician, right? But in every domain, there is quote unquote that kind of magic that is possible, but it's that kind of magic. That's just their word. It comes from the magi, just like muse and music, magi and magic. It has to do with that, right? And so once you get schooled in a certain way, and once you are in a position to inherit that particular strain of knowledge, because somebody had to quote unquote put you in the game. I mean, if you're going to get in the game at that level, somebody had to put you in that game. Unless there's a history in which it would have also still been your family, your relatives. Somebody, my great grandfather taught me this, and my uncle taught me that, and my father taught me. Whatever, it doesn't matter. And I'm saying it can be four birds. In all the four birds, you have quote unquote magicians. I'm just using that as an analogy, though it's true also. So you have political magicians, you have academic magicians, you have cultural and religious magicians, you have whoever I missed. You have those, right? And so you have those who put together movies, like the former Secretary of Treasury that just left, Mnuchin. He was a movie producer. He was a movie producer when he came. Former CIA assistant CIA director. He is a world-class magician, literally, really, actually. All right, going into government. It's the same kind of knowledge that is used, and those people who know how to translate it from one field to the other to understand the analogy between this. We listened to a young man on our Monday broadcast, the Wall Street Trapper. We were listening to him and how there a white convict in federal custody, quote unquote, gave him the game of Wall Street and quote unquote white collar crime. But the young man cleaned his act is clean, but he put him up on white collar crime game, and the young man came to understand how, hey, Wall Street is just like the street. Wall Street, the trap house wisdom that's down there, they're doing the same thing up there. So consequently, being able to draw the analogy, you can move from one world to the other world with that same knowledge. Okay, well, when we look at, I'm speaking about these movies, but if you don't have, if you don't understand, I'll give you a word so you'll know that I'm not playing. It's like, man, wait, you got something else to do? No, this is what, mashallah, is what I do. Let's go. Semiotics. If you really want to understand, if that's, and it's, again, to each is a goal to which is turning. That's inside those set of verses, 141 to 155, and that's 148, because this is Once you get that, what's your thing? When I say your thing, you know what I mean? It's like, what is that thing that you think God has given you? What do you think that thing is, that the seed that you are? What is that? What you were created, and in you is what? That's supposed to be unfolded for the benefit of the world. Meaning that you come into this life to deliver that to the world. What is that? Do you know what that is? That's what you should be looking for. That's what you should be looking for. You should be looking for that thing that, you know what, if I die doing this, I'm good. You have to find that. Because if you found that, and if your heart doesn't miss a beat and nothing flutters and your blood pressure doesn't go up when you think about it, when you do, etc., you probably got that's it. That's probably it. Oh, but why don't you do this? We should spend more time doing that. That's not my thing. That's somebody else's. That's the contribution that they brought. So let me move away from it. So the idea is that when I mention about these movies, I'm talking to you about these people who are so creative in that domain. They're so far ahead of the world in that particular knowledge. Going back to H.G. Wells, right? They're so far ahead, literally, Shakespeare, so far ahead of the world in terms of how to convert the ideas and thoughts and concepts and dramatize them, and then put them in a medium that would enable it to be able to travel through time. We're talking about Satan, Hypocrites, History, and Word, and the Word of God. To be able to put it in a package that can survive time, that can move through time, that can be transmitted over time, right? So the only thing that to draw back to the issue of the telephone booth I mentioned about the is gone now, but when these mediums, and I just mentioned Superman, Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, Trinity and her first escape from the movie Matrix, Time Bandits, it was saying, and they are saying to the extent that they stay now, these you can actually call, I would actually call, for the way that we're using it, these are cultural scriptures. These are cultural scriptures. Like sub books and imagery of the culture that hold signals of information, which if you can grasp them and recognize where they show up in the society, then they have provided you with the analogy by which you can get the benefit of information. It may be, it's like, I can't think of his name, the guy that broke the code of the Germans. Can't think of it. That then once they broke that code, then Hitler, he can send his messages, and he's trying to get his messages to his people, but because you know the code, you say, oh, that's what they're saying. And then you don't let them know that you know the code, that you let them just keep talking, keep communicating. At the same time, you're abstracting from their message what was only meant for their people. And that's how the real world Satan operates in this world. Also, they communicate what they want to communicate right in the presence of the people that they don't expect to know it, right? And since they are blind to that is their expectation, and they have worked to make and keep the people blind, then they can communicate right in front of your face, and they're not worried about you because you don't have the sense of what's going on. But let's move on. Let's cure some of that blindness, deafness, and dumbness right now. So we mentioned the telephone book. What's the symbolism? The symbolism is there's a language that can be applied to it. The first simple language is lines of communication. That's simple. Lines of communication. What are we talking about? This is how the giants and the aliens are able to stay ahead of the rest of them, set going with the economic world. when you look at one of the whoever the Rothschilds, etc. I don't have that knee-jerk reaction to the Rothschilds and all of that, but it is a fact of it. People can blow up the legend of this and legend of that, but it's still there is a fact The point is they were able to get ahead of people in the economic game because they had access to information across the waters that others did not have. Before the public got radio, these Rothschilds that we're speaking of in terms of the various crashes and losses, economic losses and the like, so they were able to, do what you call puts on Wall Street, meaning that, okay, they know that a ship went down in the Atlantic Ocean, but the rest of the people don't know that the ship went down in the Atlantic Ocean, and so therefore they're able to make a particular type of Wall Street investment, knowing that the stock is, when the news gets out to the rest of the world, that the stock is going to fall. So if I've already invested in a put, meaning that I'm going to bet that it's going to go down, I'm going to do a put on that particular. So now I'm ahead. Why? Because I got communication before everybody else got the communication. Before everybody else got the communication. So now I'm able to position myself in a way to take advantage of what they don't know, but it's coming in the future. But I've already gotten ahead of them. So we're talking about Satan, hypocrites, history, and the Word of God. So understanding the nature of time, right? And how time can be played. And that's what we're talking about, giants and aliens. Those people who understand it, the masses of people are saying, what are you talking about? Yeah, that's what the masses of people say. But the masters of the masses, they know time is malleable, right? And the whole Einstein piece, et cetera, that came, and all the rest of that came early 20th century and the like. People take advantage of these sciences and apply them in their domain, and they get further and further ahead of the people who just can't even check in on that information. But let me continue. So lines of communication. So the telephone booth is really a symbol of the fact that one of the ways that the giants and the aliens, the real world Satans, are able to stay ahead, to get ahead and stay ahead of the masses is their lines of communication. Okay. So when you talk about the Tower of Babel, right, you think about it only from a biblical perspective. And I once asked the Imam, I said, well, is the Bible a blueprint, or is it a prophecy, a blueprint for a strategy? Because you listen to the Imam, and you would think that it's like Satan is just reading the book and carrying it out. So it seems like it's like a playbook, like it's a blueprint. And then the other one is that, and is it prophecy? Is it the? He said, and it's both. It's both. It's both a book of a war strategy, and it's how those who use it against the destiny of man for their benefit. But then it's also a prophecy that these are things that are going to happen. But what does Shaitan? What he always does from that perspective is he tries to head off the movement of God's will for humanity and block the way. But in any case, the point is that lines of communication. So Tower of Babel, it says that where communication fails, no constructive work is possible. Okay. All right. So you can use that as a good person, or you can use that as a bad person. Where communication fails, no constructive work is possible. Okay, so if I see you as a threat to me, you and your group as a threat to me, then one of the ways that I can stop your progress is break up your lines of communication. Break up your lines of communication. There's a book, Dreyfus. Dreyfus is his name. The Devil's Game is the book. It talks about the whole history of how the Middle East was just totally manipulated, dominated. Let me see if I can find a real quick article to reference for you. It's an article from there's a Jewish newspaper out of Israel. And the title of this article, it says, when the Shin Bet chief, this is sort of like it's whatever, some department in the Israeli government, uh, says when the Shin Bet chief warned that educated Arabs are a problem for Israel. Okay. And I'm not going to read the article. That's just the heading. And what the article goes on to talk about is how they sought to maintain the tribalism among the Arabs and use that as a weapon against their progress and the like. But for what I'm speaking to at this very moment, the idea is that if I can confound your language, if I can confuse your language, if I can get you to not have that. And see, Farad Muhammad, he had that idea and that understanding too, because supposedly the I don't study this stuff anymore, but the deportation of the moon, something like that. The deportation of the moon. That is, we got the moon. The moon came from what this is the story. The moon came from what is now the Pacific Ocean, but it is the Pacific Ocean because some member of our tribe tried to blow the world up because they couldn't get everybody to speak one language or something, and everybody wouldn't speak one language, and so he decided he's gonna blow the world up, but he only succeeded in blowing up a part of it, and that's where we got the moon, and then the moon, all the water. There's no water on the moon because all the water from that part of the once Earth, now moon, was poured back into what's now the Pacific Ocean. But the only thing I'm pointing to is the idea of the recognition of how important it is to learn how to speak one language. Listen, the Quran says, say to the people of the book, let us come to common terms as between us and you. All of this, brothers and sisters, is these are things that are understood. And these are things, while I'm running over them, kind of quickly, these are things that we are going to have to, if we hope to progress and advance and not be Lilliputians, etc., in the presence of quote unquote giants and Gullivers of the world, we're going to have to tighten these kinds of things up, because these are the things that are being used against us, right? And these are the deficits that hold us back. As long as we have a deficit, for example, in lines of communication, then we're going to have deficits. He don't talk to her, and she don't talk to him, and they don't talk to them, and et cetera, et cetera. It's like, okay, well, done. We don't have to worry about you because you have no lines of communication. Done. Okay. And that's not, and again, don't limit your perspective in what I'm saying to the right now. This is how we spoke about the ruby wasp and the caterpillar and the cockroach last week, and how that's a drama to tell you how predators take advantage of weaker prey, right? And what I'm talking to you about now, to the predator, the two-leg predator, and man has always at one way, at some time or the other, been a predator upon another man, human beings. Human beings, it's like kill or be killed. There's a world, there's a time that we come from, that we evolved from, overtly and concretely was that kind of world. Either you're going to get me or I'm going to get you. And until civilization came up and we learned greater ways of cooperation, etc., and even greater ways of domination as well, so as to eliminate the threat and absorb those that were once a threat into your way of thinking, like the Borg on Star Trek. All right, that hasn't stopped. This is what I'm saying. That hasn't stopped. And the real world Satan uses the dark side of nature. I'll put it that way. Remember, there's khair and shar. The real world Satan uses the dark side of nature. They, just like we talk about the ruby wasp, right? Look it up, YouTube it. You can just see the movie, and so that's kind of a dark thing, right? The ruby wasp. I mean, who created ruby wasp? Allah created ruby wasp. Who created caterpillar, cockroach? Allah created them, right? And then Allah gives them to us as an ayah, and now look at this. This is what can happen to you. right? But then also the dark side of it is that, oh, I'm going to be the wasp, so I'm not going to be the cockroach, right? So that's a decision that somebody made. I'm going to be the wasp. So everything that the wasp is doing, I'm going to translate that into my real world strategy, and then I'm going to use that against the people who I see as cockroaches, and I'm going to be able to dominate them for the benefit of my generations. So they are adopting the dark side of the interpretation. I believe the righteous side of the interpretation is don't be a cockroach and don't be a ruby wasp. Don't be either one. But know that that is something that can happen to you. So that's just one example, right? So when the Imam speaks to us about the creation supported social logic, when he speaks to us about creation supported social logic, then he's talking about, look at creation, make the translation in creation to its social application, and then follow the best thereof. Right? What is the excellence in it? What is the behavior that is saying? And we're going to get to it, Brother Naeem, about this isomorphism, because everything, a lot of it has to do with that. It's about making sense out of what's going on in the creation. And the more you make sense of what's going on in the creation, and you construct your values along the line of the sense that you make of it to be morally reflected in your life. Just like I just said, don't be a ruby wasp and don't be a cockroach from a human perspective, right? Don't be a predator and don't be a prey, right? All right. So then when that becomes your value, then you walk through the world with that. Look, I'm not going to be a predator, but I'm also not going to be a prey. Right? So that's important. Okay. All of this part of the conversation is coming out of the idea of the significance of the lines of communication, which puts the giants and the aliens and the real world Satans who use their dark values, but they use it between them, and they have strong networks of communication, and they have ways of communicating, that part of which I'm talking about. Literature, it's basically the culture, just make it short. It's the culture. They are able to do what they do because they own they own the cultural medium, right? They own it. And they communicate through it, and they control the communications upon it, right? We hear the anger about there were no black people that got Emmy Awards. Okay, so you waiting for somebody else's communication system to affirm you. Where's your own communication system? Where's your own line of affirmation, etc.? Moving on from that, we're gonna close this out. So now here's a more modern term for what we're saying, and something that, and this is in cognitive sciences. The Imam spoke to it when he not in these words, but conceptually, categorically, he was saying the same thing. Speaking about your intellectual maturity. When he talked about 7, he talked about 5, then he talked about 7. And in 7 he used the term intellectual excellence, and the evolution of intellectual excellence being represented by the 7. The language that's used in cognitive science for that's their academic secular scientific term, is called distributed cognition. Common setup for that, lines of communication. Distributed cognition is like the network of minds, MINDS, the network of minds. Whoever has the strongest distributed cognition, whoever has the strongest network of minds, they are going to be more powerful in the world. They are going to be more powerful in the world. And that's how it has been historically. That's how it has been historically, and that's what it is. That's how human beings, the greater the network of distributed, like English. Just take English as a language, right? We're talking about lines of communication, distributed cognition, English as a language. When you go around English as a language in the world, by comparison. I haven't done the actual numbers, but if you look at it, its power, the power of English speaking people has to do with how much the English language is a global language. The relative power in the world has to do with how much that language is a global
90
it
seconds.
is a global language, right? Why? Because the more people who speak that language, the more networked the minds, M-I-N-D-S, are. And the more powerful then is the language and the speakers of that language in the world. And so those who are superior in the language of that network, then the more superior they're going to be in the world. Now, I'm saying that just from the simple concrete level of it. But as language has different layers and levels and powers, etc., those who rise up in what is already a powerful language, sometimes the term is used for it is lingua franca. It's the language of the marketplace. So those who get stronger in the language of a particular distributed cognition, like you speak Chinese, right? You speak Chinese, and then you get higher and higher levels of learning of speaking Chinese, because Chinese is a powerful language in the world too, from an economic perspective. Okay, so much for that. Mashallah, inshallah, I'll make a note to myself that next week we're going to continue, because all this just comes out of the whole telephone booth metaphor that's used, but it's a symbol designed to communicate a particular message to a particular people. And this is what I'm telling you. It's about lines of communication, distributed cognition, and what happens with that when you talk about language is now you can talk about past, present, and future. And these people who understand and have understood for centuries what I'm saying to you right now. This is why and how they're able to move through time, right? They're able to move through the past. They're able to move through the present. They're able to move through the future. Yeah. And inshallah, we'll speak more to that. And it's only, I guess it would have to be, it's only a mystery until you know. Then once you know, it's like, oh, that's how it's done. And it's being done every day and has been done for centuries by those who know. And they have worked very hard and been very successful in large degree of keeping people blind to that fact. And that's how they continue to be the Gullivers and the rest of the world, the Lilliputians. So mashallah, may Allah have mercy on us and guide us to the best, inshallah. Thank you all for being with us this morning, and inshallah, we will be together again with that. The questions that I'm looking at, how do I find that thing? I don't know what that thing is. Mashallah, thank you all. Mashallah, we don't have time for any questions this morning, but you can always hit me either on the chat or get me on. I'm gonna do better about those. We got Instagram questions, Facebook questions, etc. I haven't got my multi-skill set piece working. I haven't caught up with that rhythm on that technology. But inshallah, listen, my email. I'll put it in here. My email, sabilillah@aol.com. You want to get to me? Get to me. I'm the only one that reads my email, and I check my email every day. Okay. So that's that. So we do that. Hit me up. Look forward to hearing from you. God's peace be on you. Have a wonderful day. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.